Good afternoon, all of you. I would like to thank the Club of Rome Indian chapter for inviting me here on these discussions about J&K and Ladakh, especially in the new scenario that we have today. A lot has already been said about what are the opportunities available in both the UTs for development. Earlier were also available and hereafter. I would, maybe at the cost of repetition, I would like to reiterate a few. And I would slightly touch upon what all is being done by the department in the state, in the UT, on which maybe there is a scope of improvement or investment. First of all, I would like to start with the fact that designing development in a conflict zone, or we may say in a disturbed area, is not easy. It is very unpredictable, and therefore the unpredictability has, I think, taken away a lot of time and opportunity from J&K. In fact, on the inclusive and equitable growth, I think we have not been able to progress as much as we should have by now. Several focus areas which have already been discussed: tourism, horticulture. A lot of fruits and horticulture crops were mentioned by Dr. Karan Singh. Apple, cherry, strawberry, plum, what all, even citrus fruits in Jammus, everything is available. Handicraft, we all know, famous all over the country, even all over the world. Agriculture, we have basmati in Jammu. There's a special rice in Kashmir which has its own value. It's called mushk bhuji. It's a rice with some fragrance, which people really prefer. Animal and sheep husbandry, dairy farms, fisheries, poultry. We often keep discussing in the UT that we really need to focus on these areas because we have not been able to develop as much as we should have. Solar and hydropower, food processing, handloom, and a very good service industry that can really grow in these places is the packaging and marketing industry. Because while all the products are available, the branding, the packaging, the marketing is not as good as it should have been. And then, of course, the service-based industry, which can do really well in the area. There are a lot of people, huge numbers of people, already engaged in these activities, but the scale is small and the technology is not updated. Maybe there is insufficient access to capital also. So, while we don't need to introduce a lot of new activities, we really need to build on this capital that is already available in the area. While capacity building, maybe I will touch on other areas also. By their very nature, by their very geographical nature and positioning, J&K and Ladakh are not very conducive for large-scale industry. I think Dr. Karan Singh also mentioned the industry cannot run there apart from incentives. If we don't give incentives, industry can't run because we are landlocked. And therefore, industry, I'm sure it has to be invited. We have to invite industry. It shall arrive also with time. But I think it will have to focus on these areas that I just mentioned. And if we could provide backward and forward linkages for these areas, that is where industry really can flourish. Since the topic is such, I must emphasize that the biggest asset of the region are its natural endowments. And any development which is playing with these natural endowments will be bad for the area. Very, very bad. So there has to be a delicate balance between, like we say, green and development. Several technologies are available, which are the basic technologies, the local technologies, local architecture, sir mentioned. But then they are expensive. far more expensive than building a house with cement. If we go for Ladakhi architecture, it'll be far more expensive than building with cement. So what happens? We end up building everything with cement and bricks. There are local bricks available, mud bricks available, mud architecture available, but we can't do it because it's expensive. So a way has to be found out to maybe subsidize this local architecture, local material, or bring people in who can invest in these activities and make, because they're unorganized at the moment, made at local level, handmade bricks, they're expensive. If we make it an organized activity, if we put people in doing such things, maybe we'll be able to level them with the normal bricks and cement. So that has to be looked into. The other thing is that a lot of technology is available which makes development sustainable. We know that. But that is not available for masses. A normal person who's building a house in rural areas, for which we provide the money, but he doesn't know how to make it in sync with the, how to make it disaster prone. We are a zone 5 area. We are all always ready for an earthquake. But the local person who's building it in a house, he doesn't know how to make it earthquake resistant. He doesn't know what are the technologies that can be used to make it less damaging for just in case of an earthquake. So that is not available to the masses. Who tells them how to build this? So that capacity building is also required. That percolation of technology which is useful for sustainable development is also required, so that those who are living there know how to do it. An engineer who constructs a government building or a road will not be able to go and do it for everybody. So we really need to take it right down to the level of every single household and let them know what are the technologies available for sustainable development. Another thing is that I would say, like the rest of the country which we see, the economic divide or the social divide in the UT of J&K is not very huge. Maybe we can credit the very good land reforms that happened in the state earlier for this. It has had one of the best land reforms in the country. And you would find that every person in the UT has some land of his own. And therefore, I see that the economic divide is not as huge as it would be in other places. All those people who visit J&K, they always say कि नहीं यहाँ पे तो rural area में भी घर तो अच्छे बने हुए हैं, facilities तो ठीक हैं. But and I think a lot of credit goes for land reforms to that. And also, of course, the government employment sector. 4.5 lakh people are employed in the government sector. So that is also a great equalizer in the state. And I think economic upliftment also to some extent brings about social upliftment. The social divide is also not that huge there. But one divider that I see very hugely in the state is the geographical divide. The divide between the plain areas and the hilly areas. All the hilly areas have lack of access. We don't have all-weather roads connecting all the hilly areas, and therefore this lack of access is causing lack of power, lack of water, lack of government facilities, lack of education, lack of health. Our manpower is not ready to go and serve in these areas. So this hilly and plain divide is what causes a lot of problem in the state, and all the hilly areas are backward, much more backward than the plain areas. And I think we can maybe include the border areas also in this. The border areas are also being affected, and they're also not as developed as the rest of the state. I would like to touch upon a few schemes that the department is running in the state, in which maybe there are people who can help us, who can bring in investment, who can bring manpower, and who can bring capacity building. One of the activities, of course, is cleanliness and sanitation. We have declared J&K as a open defecation free state in September 2018. But I think that is just the beginning. Toilets have been constructed, yes. But the sustainability, the attitude change, the solid waste management, the grey water management, we start after building the toilets, we start on all these activities. And I think these activities are much larger in magnitude and much more complex than just building toilets. So we need people to come forward, maybe NGOs, maybe non-profit organizations, any other organization, maybe the government of India needs to come forward and provide a pool of manpower, both technical as well as motivation, attitude, behavior change organizations who need to come forward and help the UT in this. And like Dr. Karan Singh mentioned, that Jammu and Srinagar are facing waste disposal problem. No, the entire state is. And like he mentioned, Kashmir having such a delicate hydrology, its own nature, pristine nature, we are causing a lot of trouble because of this. Tourism itself is contributing so much to this problem. Amarnath Yatra happening every year. There is so much that is thought that is going into how to manage the waste that is generated by the yatra. So these are places where we really need to put our mind on and think how we can get the people, because this does not happen without the community. Whatever effort I might put in, you might put in, this will not happen till the time community gets together and does this. So we really need to bring them in this. Then another scheme that is being run, very important but much lesser talked about, is the Rural Livelihood Mission. It is the National Rural Livelihood Mission. In the state we call it the State Rural Livelihood Mission, and it has its own peculiar name in J&K called Umeed, in which we form self-help groups of ladies, 10 ladies each, and we provide them some funds, then we provide them bank linkages. There is a huge number of around 40,000 such groups available in the state. And they have been working well. They have been taking credit from the banks, doing their own activities. A lot of them are engaged in handicraft. But then again, the marketing linkage, the branding, the packaging, maybe a bit of training in improving the designing. We really need to support these groups from where they are, to take them from where they are to being fully sustainable on themselves. Till now, we are hand-holding them as a department, despite their having been created maybe 5-6 years earlier. Because that kind of forward linkage that we desire for them, we have not been able to provide. Maybe because of, again, lack of people who have been coming to the state and helping them with this. And one more thing that can be really done for them is e-marketing. If we could introduce e-marketing for these groups as a whole, that could really help them. Another scheme which is called Himayat in J&K is actually DDU-GKY all over the country, is trying to bridge the education divide created by lack of education. Children who are dropouts from schools and colleges are being trained in various skills and provided employment. But this is a kind of partnership between the government and the private sector, because the project implementing agencies who take projects under this scheme are private companies. So I would really like the whole corporate sector and all the private organizations or even government organizations, PSUs, who can do this, to skill the children first, because we provide funds for skilling. They don't have to spend anything on skilling. We will give the funds for skilling, but they have to skill the children first and then take them into their employment or any other employment. The PIAs who come, they can provide employment somewhere else also. They skill them and then they provide them employment in some other sector, in some other concern. So that can also be done. But this partnership has to be developed, and from what I have seen for the past 1.5 years, not many concerns were willing to come and work in the state. And although now we have been able to bring a lot of PIAs, around 48 of them are there with us now, but we need to improve the numbers and we need to improve the avenues of employment for these children. And we are also, when we say school dropouts and college dropouts, we're also looking at children who might just cross the line and go over to the other side. In a state like J&K, this is very much possible. So we are actually changing minds in this scheme. So if there are people who can come and help the government in this, it will be very nice. Dr. Karan Singh just mentioned about empowering the political class. So while he was just mentioning the political class at the helm of affairs, let's say the bigger political parties, I would like to emphasize, of course, I fully agree with him, and I say that there is no better way of ensuring social, economic, and development equity, and gender equity, and inclusiveness other than political empowerment. But what we as a department have been looking at it is through the Panchayati Raj system. Community participation, community decision making, social audit of the community of all the programs of the government, identification of beneficiaries by the community, planning by the community, and we have been successful in doing this through first the amendments, major amendments in the Act, then the elections in November, December 2018. We have transferred a lot of funds and functionaries, around 1,000 crores of 14 Finance Commission funds have been already transferred to these panchayats. We are giving them a lot of schemes. We are asking them to run their own Anganwadi centers. We are asking them to run Narega on their own. Narega is a scheme that really helps in the rural areas by providing employment for 100 days. And it also results in works being done which they want for themselves. We are not imposing upon them what to do, how to do it. They themselves decide what they want to do and then they do it. So, through the Panchayati Raj system, by empowering people at the very grassroots level, we have been trying to bring in the element of, and also because there is a reservation, 33% reservation for women and SC and ST in the Panchayati Raj Act of J&K. There is a whole system of inclusiveness that is being set up in the state. However, I would say that this system would be able to function and shall be successful only when we institutionalize the actual decentralization of planning through the Gram Sabhas. If the Gram Sabhas don't happen, if the Ward Sabhas don't happen, we fail in what we intend to do. So this is another area of capacity building that we are looking at. We have this concept, we have already introduced this concept of Gram Panchayat development planning, in which the whole Gram Sabha sits, all the departments in the state working in the UT, they tell the Gram Sabha what are the resources available for that panchayat for that year. They plan accordingly. They decide what is to be done with those resources, what they want to do the next year. If the Rural Development Department tells them that we will be able to provide you, let's say, 20 lakhs of funds for Narega, they decide what they want to do about it. If they tell them that we'll be able to provide you 50 houses of Prime Minister's Awas Yojana, they decide who gets it in the panchayat. So that kind of decision making we are looking at. And for that, we have held several rounds of trainings for the Panchayati Raj institution members. We are sending them on exposure visits. But we would really like organizations to come forward who have been working in this area, in the Panchayati Raj area, in the rural development area, who can come and handhold them in understanding because this is the first time that they're doing it in the state. Never before has this happened. In fact, the Block Development Councils, which is the second tier of Panchayati Raj system, has been established for the very first time in the state. So we would really like organizations to come forward and handhold them in doing this exercise, in understanding what is this about. While we are ensuring that they go to other states, they've just been to Maharashtra, a few of them, they've been to Hyderabad also. We're trying to make them learn how to go about it. But if we have people who can come and explain it to them and make them do it when they're into the exercise, that will be really helpful. While they're preparing the Gram Panchayat development plan, they prepare the plan not only for 1 year, but there is a prospective planning involved. We try to tell them that you mention all the demands that have been generated in the Gram Sabha by anybody, any form, whatever somebody wants, and then see what resources are available and then go about and take decisions on how and when you want to implement it. So we have been trying to make it as inclusive as possible. But then, like I said, there's a long way to go. This is the first time they're doing it. One more very important area that we often fail to look at is the convergence of efforts by the government itself. We see several programs running here and there in the form of, while I'm saying that we are forming self-help groups, the agriculture department would also be forming self-help groups, the horticulture department would also be forming self-help groups. These schemes need to converge, and we need to come on one single platform to ensure that whatever scheme is happening in one single direction, with one thought of, with one goal in mind. And like I said, just like GPDP at the Gram Panchayat level, this is the similar kind of planning at the higher level, at the state level, at the UT level. So this kind of convergence of resources is very essential to ensure that there is, once we have the goals in mind, what we want to do. We want to promote tourism, we want to promote ecology, we want to promote afforestation, we want to promote self-help groups, we want to promote agriculture. And then we, all of us along, of course, I say everything that we do has to be in partnership with the private enterprise and the NGOs and the non-profit organizations and everybody available. So we all come together and decide what are the goals that we have for ourselves, we decide what the resources are available for us, and then we go about doing it. So that kind of planning is very, very essential at the very initial stage. And lastly, I would only emphasize that two things, I think, education and capacity building are very, very important. Education, not infrastructure or manpower, I think we have enough of that. But one, capacity building of our teachers, and two, the content of education. If we are able to introduce innovation, cleanliness, equity, equality, climate, all that we have been talking about, environment, skill and industry, justice, peace, social harmony, inclusive growth in our education, in the educational content, in the curriculum, I think we would have achieved half the goal there only, because the next generation would know what to do. At the moment, I think what we teach in our schools, they're at a loss. Just after coming out of school, they only know how to get an employment or do their own business, maybe if we provide them enough skills. But what about all the factors that we are discussing here today? I think our children need to know in advance, and only when education has this inbuilt in its whole curriculum will we be able to achieve this. And lastly, as I said, capacity building important for all sectors of the state at the moment. Because of 370, we have not had manpower from outside the state ever. Nobody except maybe the civil services is from outside. The teachers are from the state itself, the doctors are from the state itself, all the manpower is from the state itself. So we really need to build their capacities, to train them, to send them outside, to give them exposure visits, to let them know how things are happening all over the country, all over the world. And that is when I think we would be able to take anything forward, even technology. A road like PMGSY, under PMGSY, while I was saying that there are areas which do not have access, PMGSY is one scheme that can really connect them. But what about the cost that is involved? That is huge in our areas. And the technology, the skill that is required is much different from what we require in any other area, in a plain area. So all those capacity building exercises need to be undertaken if we want the development to go the way we want it to. Thank you so much.